And welcome back. Our final conversation this morning is with Councillor Eliud Miller, but he's not here in his capacity as a member of the Belize City Council. He is here as an adventurer and a trekker. Good morning, Eliud.
Good morning,
Good morning.
Isani. Good morning, Sabrina. Thank you all for having me, of course, in a different capacity.
Certainly.
Yeah, I look forward to a conversation this morning, and I'd like just to say good morning to my family and the residents of Belize City as well. Yeah.
So, before we took our commercial break, we were talking about this particular discussion and the fact that for persons who are thrill seekers, perhaps this is something that they don't want to miss out on. If they have on their bucket list wanting to, climb to the summit of the Victoria Peak, you have.
Yeah.
Let's start first of all talking about that experience. What was it like for you, and when were you able to accomplish this feat?
Yeah, well, you spoke of Victoria Peak being a bucket list item, and I think it certainly is for a number of reasons. The first being is that it is one of the most renowned trails in our region, actually, right? And that is because it covers two of our natural reserves, right? Both the Coxcomb Basin as well as the Victoria Peak Monument Reserve, right? And so you basically get two for the price of one,
Yeah.
right? It's a 54 kilometer journey, which is significant, right, for a 3-day trek. And so the wildlife that you see, the experiences, the way that it builds you as a person, right, and as an adventurer, it's one of a kind, right? No amount of money really sells it enough. I was able to accomplish this last March, right? We were actually the second group to go when the season opened last year. And even it being within the dry season, we still experienced some rain, some challenges on the trail. And so, although we did not expect to, we were prepared for it. And that is the most important thing about this journey, being prepared. Yeah.
Why was it important for you to have this experience?
Well, I'm an adventurer at heart. Because of the kind of work that I do, I don't get to be outside as much as I'd want to do, as much as I'd want to. But I actually have a really great group of friends that I went with. Most of them were doing the expedition for the second time, right?
Okay.
And so I went along with Mrs. Madeline Bowen. I went along with Andrea Pitts, right? And so they're very good friends of mine. And so they convinced me to get out of the office for a change and to do this, right? And of course, I jumped on it. I did not have any of the gear that I needed at the time, right? But I went out, I got my gear. I did some research on the trail. And some of the things that I could expect to encounter, and so I made the decision to do it. I think only just about 200 people, or less than 200 people, do it on an annual basis, right? And so at the end of the day, it's really just a handful of Belizeans that get to experience this journey.
Beyond your physical ability to trek for long distances, what is the mental preparation like? Because I would presume that you have persons who would want to take on this kind of a challenge halfway in there saying, I'm not built for this.
I
And
would
it's
be
not
that
a-
individual. Just saying
It's not
that.
so much physical as it is mental. Though.
Yeah.
What is the preparation like?
For myself, honestly, I consider myself an athlete. I don't play sports competitively, but I am an athlete. I play multiple disciplines and I play on a weekly basis, right? And so I would consider myself someone in good physical shape, but even I had second thoughts on the first day, right? But there's a number of things to consider. First of all, your weight, right?
Yeah.
The weight that you carry. You have to realize, as you see in that picture, I have a huge bag on my back. And that was my mistake. I was told over and over again, only take the essentials, right? Only take what you need. And
So what did you have in that bag? Why was it so full?
I had food, I had water, I had clothing, right?
Okay.
Those are practically the most three important components of this trip, right? In order to survive it. Water, you meet water along the trail, and so you just have to take 2 liters to last you until a certain point. And after a certain point, you come across freshwater streams every kilometer of the trail, right? And so it helps you with your weight to not be carrying a bunch of water. You just refill every time you encounter the streams. But mental preparation is extremely important. This is one of those things that you have to go in with a clear mind, right? Because it really will test you. Like I said, on the first day, I consider myself to be in good physical shape, and I had to ask the tour guide to back my bag for like a kilometer, right? And I was extremely embarrassed because here you are having other people, even some of the females, carrying their bags, but mine was just too heavy. And so without the tour guide, and I'd want to shout him out right now, Mr. Benedicto. He's an extremely great tour guide. He has actually accomplished summiting Victoria Peak over 80 times.
Wow.
Right?
Wow.
80 times. And so he's a legend in my books, yeah.
Yeah.
But physical and mental preparation are extremely important.
Well, here's the thing, right? Once you set off on a trek and you are carrying a certain weight, maybe it's manageable within a reasonable time.
Yeah.
Farther you go, the heavier it becomes.
Yeah.
And it's not because you're adding more into the bag.
Yeah.
It's just that your body,
Yeah.
the physical exertion and what have you, it starts to literally weigh down on you.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
I would think that a lot of what you should carry are lightweight objects, or well, lightweight items,
Correct.
so
Yeah.
to speak, right?
Yeah.
So if you're looking at items of clothing, you know, I put a thick, heavy sweater in there because that in itself becomes a weight on its own down the road.
That was my issue. I took a second pants, and the pants was a hiking pants, but it has great weight, right? And so looking back, I said I should have only taken one pants, right?
Yeah.
Why switch it out? But I took two, and I had to carry the weight. The way how it is set up is the journey is 27 kilometers each way, right? But you camp at the 12-kilometer mark, and so from day one, you leave Coxcomb Basin to the 12-kilometer mark. You base up there. And then the second day, you move off from the 12-kilometer mark up to the 27th kilometer. And day two is really the most challenging day, right? I was telling Sabrina earlier, at the very start of day two, you encounter Heartbreak Hill. And it's truly called Heartbreak Hill for a reason, right? It will truly test you. Everything, it will take everything out of you. And it is literally the first encounter of the morning on day two. But
what is it about it though? Is it because
it's just the incline, the gradient, right? It's like just a steep gradient for about, I would say, anywhere from 45 minutes to about an hour, right?
Goodness
and
gracious.
just continuous hiking, right? And on those continuous late ascending hikes, it doesn't benefit you to stop, right? And so you have to keep on going, keep on pushing. And really, once you get over Heartbreak Hill, then it becomes a bit easier on day two. Of course, the other challenge on day two is actually reaching to the summit itself. That requires a bit of rappelling. I don't know if you knew, but you actually have to physically climb using ropes, right? And pull up your own weight, including whatever weight you're carrying. And so just before we reached on the peak there, and as that video is showing, you had to do a bit of rappelling in order to actually reach to the top. So day two is quite the challenge. Yeah, it really is.
So for me, I think my biggest fear personally would come from the wildlife I may encounter.
Yeah.
But I have to say, now that you mentioned rappelling, that also does not sound so fun. Was there any part of the experience that became a bit scary to you?
I think a number of times we got a bit frightened. One being, I think it was day one, night one, our first night sleeping out there. We were all based up. We were in our hammocks under the tent, and in the middle of the night, we heard screams, right? But not like from a person, from an animal. And then a couple of us got up and we realized that it was actually either a jaguar or a puma or something of the sort attacking a hog, right? And they were going at it. And so, of course, if you're sleeping and you hear that kind of activity out in the jungle and you're not protected, right, you will have concerns.
Goodness.
Yeah, and then the second night
For some of us, that's part of the excitement.
Yeah, it is. For me, it was, but of course I was still concerned, right? Because we're out in the
We
open.
might be next to Sani.
Yeah. The second thing being an experience with my good friend Andre. We're always looking back and we're laughing at it in the middle of the night on night two. We just heard a great fall, like somebody dropped on the ground, right? And we're all sleeping. And so his hammock essentially just gave in the middle of the night, right? And we're at least 5 to 6 feet above ground, right?
Oh, wow.
In order to not have anything reach you while you're sleeping. And his hammock just gave in the middle of the night. I could imagine his fright getting up to that, but he was okay, and we were glad to get up and help him get back, string up back his hammock. But that was quite the experience too. But no, you spoke earlier about some of the encounters, and for me personally, I saw a number of species of butterflies, even snakes, right? Insects, ants that I have never seen before, and so it was quite a unique experience. As you see there, I have a snake on my hand, right? If you see there, you have some quite unique caterpillars. And these are things you won't see in your daily life living in a area like Belize City, right? And so it's beautiful to go out and see these things. Of course, we get these experiences, but we also maintain our safety, of course, with our guide. They are quite used to this. As I said, he's done it over 80 times, and so it's an absolutely beautiful experience.
You know, what is interesting is the fact that while you as a fairly fit person and a young person, cited as that, have enjoyed this experience, I think about the time when Rowan Garel
I was thinking that too.
was also able to ascend to the summit of the Victoria Peak. And this is someone who is blind, right? And had to go through the rigors that you described. And that's because you're seeing where you're going.
Yeah, correct.
In his case, he had to be led by hand to the summit of the Victoria Peak.
Yeah.
And I'm thinking, if he can do it and you can do it, then the average person should be able to do it. Right? It's just a matter of, you know, mentally preparing yourself. Now, the physical aspect of it, because I presume that there's some degree of climbing that has to come along with it in terms of, you know, getting to where you're going to the height of it. What would you say would perhaps be a reasonable, I'm not going to say ideal because ideal is on the far end of the spectrum. What would you say would be a reasonable weight for a young man to be able to accomplish this?
I would say anywhere from 180 to about 240, 250 pounds. I think anything beyond that would be quite the struggle, right? So, because as I said, you're carrying additional weight, right? But you spoke of the gentleman earlier, and I have a great level of respect for him, because what we don't realize is that he can't necessarily see and plan for what is coming, right? And even me, in seeing that this great challenge is ahead of me and being able to plan for it, I still found it challenging, right? And so I could imagine for him. And so that is certainly a great personal feat for him. But yes, I think there's a number of things that come into play. You have to be in decent physical shape, right? You don't have to be an athlete, but you must be able to at least engage in this kind of activity, right? And you must not have any underlying health conditions, because you will certainly struggle out there if that is the case. So I say anywhere between that range, you should be able to pull it off. So
if you're asthmatic or you have those kinds
I
of
certainly wouldn't recommend it. No, none at all.
Let's talk about the reward, though. Seeing the views, was it worth it?
Certainly was. You almost have a 360 view of the entire landscape, as you could see on the video there. Victoria Peak is actually 3,675 feet, right, above sea level. And most people believe that it is the highest peak in Belize, but it is actually not. It is the highest traversable peak. We have Doyle's Delight, which is just 13 feet above Victoria Peak at 3,688 feet. The only thing is that it is not traversable at this time. But it was certainly worth it. But after being in the jungle for a day and a half, all of us just wanted to make a call home. It's good to mention that you don't have service the entire time. The only time that you get service is when you summit. It's almost like it's the reward of being out there, right? And
so here's a question, right? Something like this is overwhelming when you get to the top and you're able to have a panoramic view of the country. Isn't it, in a sense, spiritual?
It is. It really is. I mean, we are all comparing ourselves to the eagle, right? You know, I think I have a video of it. Not sure if I was able to share it, but we were on the peak and we could actually see hawks and a couple eagles flying below us, right? And that was just amazing to us. Like, we always imagine what their view of the world is, but we are even higher than that now, right? And so it's a beautiful experience, because even traversing this area in a helicopter or in a plane, right, when you're making your way into the country, it's different. You don't get this feel, right? You're not out there feeling the breeze and feeling the cool wind, right? And so it's an extremely beautiful experience. The only thing is that you don't spend much time up there, right? You get to the peak, you spend 20 to 25 minutes, and then your guide is leading you back down, right? Because you have to make it to base before night. And so that 20 to 25 minutes, I must say, is probably one of the best periods of time I've spent in recent years. in being up there. You feel at one with nature, and that is truly, truly a beautiful feeling. Yeah.
Perhaps it's really just about the journey then,
Yeah.
and not so much the destination. But I definitely think the final destination seems worth the view. I'm not sure for me and wildlife, just that photo of you holding a snake sent me squeezing in my chair. But let's use this final opportunity to encourage our viewers to take that challenge if it's something that they really feel they would like to experience.
Yeah, I would want to encourage every Belizean that would want to do something like this to go for it, right? It's not impossible. It will certainly challenge you. Day 1 is considered easy, day 2 moderate, and day 3 is considered a bit challenging just because you're running low on energy and you have to make your way back to the Coxcomb Basin, no? But I don't want to encourage everybody to do it. For me, it's one of the most beautiful experiences I've had, right? It is right up there when you compare it to possibly going to a safari in Africa, right? I really put this above that and have been able to do both. It builds you as a person also, right? I was not aware that I could handle some of the things that I had to handle out there, right? I had to survive without Coke. I am addicted to drinking sodas, and I had to go 3 days without it. And so
you don't need that extra weight.
Yeah, it's a lot of. You will certainly learn a lot of new things about yourself, and overall, it's a beautiful experience. And even in experiencing the people that you do it with, right? It's a great time to bond with people, learn new things, and like I said, just grow as a person. And so I certainly encourage everybody to reach out there before the end of the period closes in May. Yeah.
Is there a cost associated with taking this trip?
Yeah, there's a small cost, but there's a number of things to consider. I think it's optional whether you stay in the Coxcomb Basin the night before. What we did is we stayed in Coxcomb Basin the Thursday night. We slept there, and then our trip began the Friday morning at 5:30 a.m. Right, and so it's optional if you take that on or not, but with that option, I think everything was still below $500 for everything, and that included the room where we slept the night before, all the fees for our guides, all the other fees associated with being within the reserve space, and so just about that number took care of absolutely everything for us.
And who do you contact if you'd like to do this?
You could reach out to a number of persons, but of course, I would encourage you to reach out to Mr. Benedicto Chuck. I will leave his information with you all. He's one of the greatest guides to take on this challenge. As I said, he's done it over 80 times, right? And so he's certainly a legend, a Victoria Peak legend in my books.
Strong legs.
Yeah, he really is. Yeah. But of course, you could always reach out to the Coxcomb Basin. They have all the relevant information you need. And there's also a guide online, a Victoria Peak guide, which shows you the route, gives you a great idea of what you could expect on this journey. And so you could go that route as well. Yeah.
All right. Elude, thanks so much for stopping by and sharing this experience with us. I'd love to live vicariously through whoever goes. That's my take on it. But I think it still seems like one of those experiences that are once in a lifetime.
Yeah, certainly is. And thank you all for having me. And I wish you guys and our entire Belize city a fruitful week. Yeah.
All right. Thank you so much. We're going to take our final break, and when we come back, we wrap things up.